Welcome back to The Explainer. So imagine this scenario for a second. You meet someone new, you make plans for a date, and the two of you meet up at a local restaurant for dinner. You're really hoping for that spark, that instant, undeniable connection. But literally from the very beginning, you can just sense something is entirely off. The vibe is wrong, the conversation is halting, punctuated by that awkward, agonizing sound of clinking silverware. It's that visceral, highly relatable nightmare restaurant date that so many of us have had the distinct misfortune of sitting through. Well, today, we're going to break down the actual science of why these dates happen, why we so eagerly ignore the warning signs, and what is really going on in our brains when romance goes completely off the rails.
Section 1. The Nightmare Date. Okay, let's just dive right into this by mapping out an all-too-familiar scenario to see exactly where things go wrong. Because these bad dates, they don't usually just fall apart randomly, right? They follow a highly recognizable pattern of escalating disasters. Let's walk through the steps of this disastrous evening. Step 1. You arrive, and your date is absolutely glued to their phone. The blue light is just illuminating their disinterested face. They put it down, they pick it up, they scroll, completely ignoring your attempts at conversation. Then, step 2. They casually excuse themselves to the restroom and mysteriously disappear for 10 full minutes. Are they texting someone else? Calling a friend for an escape route? You literally have no idea. Step 3. You look across the restaurant and realize they haven't gone to the restroom at all. They're actually flirting with someone at the bar. The absolute audacity. And finally, step 4. They return to the table, promptly order several strong drinks, get drunk before the appetizers even arrive, and start talking endlessly and bitterly about their exes. In the moment, these aren't just minor annoyances. They're blatant signs of disrespect. They are classic, undeniable warning signs that this person is not going to be a good partner. Yet, astonishingly often, people will still go on a second date. Which actually brings us to this brilliant pop culture quote from the Netflix series BoJack Horseman. The character Wanda Pierce, having just gone through the painful fallout of a toxic relationship, laments, it's funny. When you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. This quote perfectly establishes the emotional thesis of our explainer today. Why do we so frequently ignore these glaring warnings? Why do we put on the rose-colored glasses and actively pretend that a disastrous, disrespectful evening was just a minor hiccup?
Moving on to Section 2, the biological stakes of dating. Let's look at the science and see how this builds, because missing these flags is actually a massive public health issue.
It's not just a minor annoyance or a funny story to tell your friends over brunch. The stakes of who we choose to partner up with are incredibly high. When we look at the data, humans possess a fundamental biological need to belong. When you're in a good, satisfying relationship, you enjoy immense psychological and physiological benefits. In fact, research shows you have a 50% greater likelihood of survival. That is a staggering number. A supportive partner lowers your baseline stress, improves your sleep, and offers a buffer against the physical wear and tear of daily life. But contrast that with the other side of the equation. A bad relationship doesn't just make you sad, it physically damages you at a cellular level. Unhappy partnerships keep your body in a constant state of fight or flight. This elevated cortisol leads to an increased presence and severity of heart disease, profound anxiety, and deep depression. The chronic stress of a toxic relationship can literally weaken your immune system, leaving you susceptible to systemic inflammation, illness, and chronic fatigue. This is exactly why paying attention to red flags isn't just about having a pleasant Saturday night. It's about actively protecting your very survival.
All right, Section 3, defining relational red flags. The crucial point here is understanding the academic definition of what we are actually experiencing during these bad dates. We throw the term red flag around a lot in pop culture, but in the realm of interpersonal communication research, it is a very specific, deeply rooted meaning. A relational red flag is defined as any undesirable characteristic, behavior, state, or trait in a potential partner that conflicts with our own expectations, similarities, and compatibilities. Notice how impartial this is. A red flag isn't necessarily just someone being a mustache-twirling villain. It's a signal of severe interpersonal incompatibility. It tells us that our core values, our attitudes toward life, and our fundamental personalities are clashing. If you value deep, honest communication and your date values evasiveness and drunkenly venting about an ex, well, that's a core value clash. These are the underlying incompatibilities that threaten to completely derail a relationship, bringing all of those negative health consequences right to your front door.
Section 4. A history of ignored signals. This proves that ignoring these signals isn't just a modern dating app problem brought on by smartphones and fleeting attention spans.
It's actually a timeless, deeply ingrained human flaw. Just look at these classic literature examples. For centuries, humans have been romantically doomed by ignoring fatal dissimilarities. Think of Shakespeare's Othello. Desdemona looks past Othello's blinding violent jealousy, and that choice ends in absolute murder and tragedy. Or consider Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. Isabella Linton marries Heathcliff, entirely convinced he's an exciting, brooding, handsome hero. She completely ignores the red flags of his coarse brutality and his unquenchable thirst for petty revenge until she's trapped. In Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, Anna leaves her stable life for Alexei Vronsky, idealizing the passionate romance while willfully ignoring the signals of his deeply flawed ambitions and crippling insecurities. And in F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, Daisy marries Tom Buchanan, ignoring the glaring signals of his arrogant, sexist, and racist cruelty. All of these characters bought into the myth that opposites attract. All of them ignored the glaring relational red flags staring them right in the face. And all of them met tragic, avoidable ends.
Let's move to Section 5, the science of signal detection. Let's pull back the curtain and look at the dense academic theories that serve as our decoder rings for human behavior.
How does the science of communication actually explain this timeless inability to see what is right in front of us? I want you to ask yourself this critical question. Why do we miss these warning signs? Why didn't Desdemona see it? Why didn't you see it when your date was blatantly flirting with the bartender? Well, believe it or not, the answer actually originates in military research. In the 1940s, during the Second World War, researchers were developing pulsed radar equipment to detect incoming enemy aircraft. They quickly realized that accurately identifying a target wasn't just about having the best technology. It was heavily dependent on the psychology of the human operator sitting in a dark room, staring at a screen, trying to distinguish a flock of birds from an enemy bomber. This fascinating military dilemma eventually birthed what social scientists call signal detection theory.
To really get this, we first have to clearly define a signal. According to the research, a signal is anything that acts as an incitement to action, transmitting a message during the course of a behavior. In the context of dating, a signal could be a warm, gentle smile across the table, which incites you to lean in and open up. Or conversely, it could be your date aggressively downing 4 strong cocktails in 20 minutes, which should absolutely be a blaring signal inciting you to ask for the check, grab your coat, and sprint for the exit.
This brilliantly illustrates signal detection theory in action. We are constantly navigating a vast, overwhelming sea of information. The reason we miss signals, the reason we ignore those red flags, comes down to 2 massive factors: noise and uncertainty. Think about the environment of a first date. You're nervous. The restaurant is loud. You're trying to remember your best, most charming stories. You're hyper-aware of whether they like your outfit. That is all psychological and environmental noise. Because of this overwhelming noise and just the general uncertainty of meeting a total stranger, your internal radar gets jammed. Just like a 1940s radar operator blinded by bad weather, our cognitive bandwidth is entirely maxed out. We only have so much processing power. Because 90% of our brain is focused on surviving the social anxiety of the date, strong signals, like intense disrespect or rudeness to a waiter, slip right past our defenses undetected.
Finally, Section 6, violating the dating script. Let's examine what happens in our brains when a red flag successfully cuts through that noise and negatively disrupts our reality.
See, we all carry what researchers call cognitive scripts. Think of these as literal movie scripts running in your head, the mental rules and societal norms we hold for how specific events should unfold. For a first date, the script is pretty simple. You arrive, you politely greet each other, you ask engaging questions, you eat, and you say a respectful goodbye. That is the socially agreed upon script. Expectancy violation theory, which was brilliantly conceptualized by researcher Judy Burgon, explains how we process the fallout when that script is unexpectedly broken. When your date disappears to the bathroom for 10 minutes to text someone else, they've shattered your cognitive script. A red flag is essentially a massive system error. Think of it like a computer throwing a giant glowing 404 error page right in the middle of a program. It negatively disrupts the expected rules of courtship. When this happens, your brain jolts. It flags the behavior as a negative violation, sending a stark, jarring warning that this person's conduct is entirely incompatible with your reality.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. Are you wearing rose-colored glasses? Take a moment and really think about your own past, or maybe even current romantic encounters. What relational red flags, what massive system errors are disrupting your own dating scripts right now? Are you writing them off because of the noise and uncertainty of life, or are you actually reading the signals clearly? Remember, recognizing these signals isn't just about avoiding an awkward evening at a loud restaurant. It is quite literally about protecting your physiological health, your immune system, and your long-term happiness. Stay sharp, read the signals, and always trust your internal radar.